Recording.
That's for the Zoom so that when we project this later on, later on to the community or those that want to see it or they're not able to join are able to watch. To be able to join you this evening as we present acceptance of the agenda, rules of order. I think we're doing a presentation of the 2023-24 operational budget for the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, and we're joined by a number of our directors within the organization. We'll take business from the floor. We have a resolution that we need to consider for acceptance, and the agenda by Dwayne, seconds by Sarah. All in favor? All right, thank you. So this evening we have a couple of members of council who's joining us online, but Chief Tim Thompson and Ben Custom at our general meetings, we observe a moment of silence for the members that we've lost since the last general meeting, and we do have the cancellation protocol, which is not in effect tonight, but I want to pay tribute to the members of the community that have passed since the last general meeting. So I'll ask for a moment of silence now in their recognition. All right, thank you very much. So this evening's meeting will start about 6 p.m. and it will proceed to about 8 p.m. at which time we will do a check to see where we are at on the agenda and how much time we have and whether or not we will continue the meeting or allocate the further discussion items to the next general meeting. This is a public forum, so personal issues will not be dealt with in this forum. If you have any issues that you want to discuss that affect you as a community member, or you want to talk about something in relation to service of the Mohawk Council, we ask that this not be the forum where we talk about those personal matters. We will address those in one-on-one conversations. So, as well, in relation to the discussion item that we're talking about, we ask that you please please your questions, please keep them on point of what the discussion item is. So if there are other questions that you want to talk about, other issues, business from the floor is where we talking back and followed up upon and reported at the next day. That the microphones are new. We haven't used them like this before. For those of you in the want to ask question or address council, we ask that you please use a microphone. We do have a wireless microphone. That's because we are recording this on Zoom, and there are members of the community or council on Zoom, and they can't hear when you're asking a question. So it's hard for them to either, anyone who wants to view the recording at a later date can't hear the question that you've asked. So please use the microphone so that it's projected into the room and captured more adequately. As well, it is being video recorded, so the line of sight is the tripods here. Anything in this point forward, including on the screens, is being video recorded. We won't turn it to you, the camera to you when you're asking a question, but we just want you to be conscious that the front is being video recorded as well. So that is the rules of order for this evening's general meeting. I'm going to take a moment to go through. We do have the packages at the back of the room as well that has this information in there. The follow-up action items from asked there around, does MCA have control over its social assistance that is given to each individual? And the answer is provided there. It's quite a comprehensive answer for that question, but again, the answer is in your packages. The second one, what happened to the snowplow in the village? Can we find out? This is that particular snowplow hasn't run its course and is out to the pasture. Whatever that means on a pasture truck, but that's a follow-up from the last general meeting. Okay, so we're going. Oh, sorry, there's one on the back side. The other one was the stop sign on Third Street. You said it had to go through a traffic study. What is the status of that? So the traffic study is pending. There's a human resource needed within the department, and an MCR will be forthcoming at the next council meeting, which will identify how the position will be financed. So that's the response on that. I'm just going to do a check for those online. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can hear you, but you become choppy at times.
Yes, well.
So
That's
Grand Chief,
probably-
I'm gonna ask that. I know Chief April and I were supposed to present, but for clarity, I'll ask that you guys take care of it there in the rec hall.
You're coming through completely fine, so why don't we try it in a way?
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Okay, so we're going to turn to the presentation that we have this evening. So we are presenting the 2023-24 operating budget at the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne. So the presentation is available to you, but it's being projected on the screen. So it outlines what our vision is as the Mohawk Council. Our mission is with a good mind is our responsibility to protect and exercise our inherent rights while creating sustainable partnerships and building a stronger community for future generations. The values as family and work are about relationships. Success in life must tie to the qualities of our relationship and how much spirit we put into them. And our principles are the principles that we have embraced for a long time, and that is of peace, good mind, and strength. So those are form part of our MCA strategic plan that goes into the building of our budgets that are submitted for council's consideration annually. And so that's what we are presenting this evening as the budget. So along as well with the development of our strategic plan, we have 7 priority areas, 7 pillars that have helped form the strategic plan as well. So we wanted to present those to you. We have already officially presented the strategic plan to you at a previous general meeting, but we wanted to again present that so that you can see the correlation between the priority areas and the finance and the budget of the MCA. So the first priority area is the governance politics, and I think that members of the council are going to help me walk through this really quickly and before we move into the financial presentation. Who's doing the first line?
I have the first one, Grand Chief.
What was that?
I said I have it. Hold on.
Just give me a second, Julie. Go ahead.
Question, is this presentation on the budget based on the envelope, the 10-year agreement?
We'll get to that when they start going through the line items. Like, it's in there. Go ahead, Julie.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm just trying to move my screen here. Oh. Hold on. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Oh no, I just lost my page again. Okay, so governance and politics. Akwesasne is on its journey towards self-determination and self-government. This process is well underway. The second bullet, MCAs, through its different departments, already embodies many facets of self-governance. These aspects will continue to be strengthened in a way that respects our Akwesasne history, culture, and traditions. The roles and responsibilities within MCA structure will be actively communicated to community members and solidified through community feedback. Current laws and regulations need to be updated so that they can be integrated into everyday life of Akwesasne. These include the amendments currently being done, for example, for the Akwesasne election law and the residency law. As the community continues to move through the process of self-determination towards autonomy, with various external governments, new elements of self-governance or self-determination will be redefined. Community will help clarify priorities for self-determination, and through active participation, they will help shape how this is done. An active and involved community sends a strong message to non-First Nations governments in terms of the community's readiness for self-determination.
Economic development. Economic development provided a structure whereby the community can build growth and prosperity. Many different First Nations in Canada have found innovative ways to do this, which respect their traditional and cultural background, which then helps strengthen financial situation in a culturally respectful manner. In Akwesasne, present effective economic activities need to be identified and preserved. These will be the foundation for future economic development. Business and partnerships that are not flourishing may need to be, after careful review, encouraged to adapt, change their processes, or focus in order to meet a continually changing need in society. Organizations that aim to meet the basic needs of the community will be prioritized in terms of active financial support, as well as the creation of effective support programs for different community members, gender, age, at risk, etc., so that they can become more active in building the economy of the community. Local businesses will be encouraged to develop new technologies and to form innovative partnerships with outside groups, businesses, government to create a sustainable success.
Thank you. April, are you doing this one?
Yes. Culture and language. We know that preserving and revitalizing our Akwesasne culture, Geha language is essential. Therefore, we need to increase ways to weave our language and culture into our daily lives. New technology will be implemented to preserve and share the language and culture and knowledge so that it's accessible to all. Akwesasne learning resources will continue to be created locally. Fluent Mohawk speakers need to be encouraged to lead in the teaching. The responsibility for our language and culture will be shared between everyone. Everyone must do their part for the Ganya language to flourish. Attach flyers as an example of how we are working towards language integration and opportunities for our community members. This event will take place. This event took place over this past weekend.
Priority 4 is health and well-being. Health and well-being remain a challenge for our community due to past traumas and many other factors. Akwesasne will continue to be supported and grow to be an inclusive and welcoming community that takes care of all of its members, including its most vulnerable. We will work towards having responsive support systems available to community members throughout their healing journey. Akwesasne members need to be supported in their health journey, both within the community and at times outside the community. We want to work towards building our internal capacity with professional opportunities for our own community members, provided to encourage our people to become health sector workers in Akwesasne. This would help community be less dependent on outside services and provide support. This is meaningful and responsible to our needs and varied contexts. Now,
Social development. Community needs opportunities to socialize with access to infrastructures that are include and accessible to everyone in the community. Community members of different gender, age, and interest have varied needs in physical activity, in community and cultural activities, as well as positive development of themselves as individuals, as families, and as active community members. The focus is to expand our ability to provide leisure and community-based activities for all ages, to develop a value of volunteerism and providing opportunities within the community to participate in a volunteer-based activity. These volunteer-based activities provide the opportunities for community members not only to participate, but to also lead. Leadership activities are very fulfilling and help develop the value of giving back. These activities need to be held in a safe, accessible, and appropriate building and place. These activities need to occur in all 3 districts of the community. A community that can effectively engage in positive social activities will be healthier and happier. Now,
Priorities fit, environment, infrastructure, housing.
Yep.
The Akwesasne community has worked hard to maintain its land and to negotiate land agreements to regain its rightful lands. To protect our land, we must be continuous communication with many different levels of government, such as municipal, 2 provinces, the federal government, the St. Regis Mohawk tribe, and the US government. This interaction complicates the process in terms of gaining back and or when trying to address environmental issues. Housing remains a priority in upcoming years, with youth wanting to stay on territory and families growing. We need to work toward a plan to accommodate these emerging needs. With our infinite of property available and consciousness of preserving the precious land we have, Mohawk Council of Akwesasne will move ahead with careful, well thought out planning for building housing, managing present and future road systems, sewage systems, water distribution and infrastructure, etc. Land management will be conducted with a 7-generation mindset of making decisions that make sense today, but will also protect our generations in the future. Effectively managing the environment and infrastructure is essential for the community and is very closely linked to the community's future well-being.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Priority 7 is MCA service efficiency. MCA delivers important and essential services to the community, as well as being the largest employer. We strive to continually and consistently deliver quality services in an efficient and effective manner. We will work with our employees to ensure that they provide and efficient services and treat our community members well while performing these services. Investing in the continual development of our staff will ensure that our services remain up to date and innovative while remaining true to our roots and beliefs. The MCA management will lead the workplace to create a safe environment so that their employees' energy can be properly focused on the community. The more effective MCA becomes at delivering quality service, the more community members will be able to focus on the well-being of their families and of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So those are the 7 priority areas that we've developed in a strategic plan for the Mohawk Council. And as mentioned, the priority areas help shape the budget for the next coming fiscal year, and what we're about to present is the current fiscal year that we're in and the priorities that have been set and how the finance supports that. We are going to go through an overview of the entire organizational budget, and then each department director will speak to their department specifically. But because of some priorities, I'm going to ask the chief of police, associate chief, to do her presentation first, and then we'll proceed with the overall, and then go to the other directors as we go along. So.
Yeah. Okay, so good evening. I'm Leanne O'Brien. I'm the deputy chief of the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Service. Sean is at the graduation ceremony for our new police recruits at the police college in Elmer, so he can't be here tonight. He sends his regrets. So if you don't know, or I may have to remind some people, the Department of Public Safety was created last year. And now falls under that department, as well as compliance, police, the JIT, our SAVE unit, which is our Marine unit, dispatch, ambulance, and the EOC. Next slide. Budget highlights are as follows. For the police service, starting last year, we received new funding to support the additional hiring of 4 officers. So that brings our current quadpartite agreement to fund 30 officers. And this new agreement will be going to March 31st, 2029. Funding for our community safety officers, which is a pilot project, also known as our compliance officers, has also been secured for $955,000 annually. And this will be added to our operational budget to support 6 full-time compliance officers. As it is right now, we have 1 full-time compliance officer. We have 4 more in the process of being hired. We'll be posting again for another officer. Investments will be made for new police vehicles, marked and unmarked, as well as new equipment for compliance officers, a vehicle, a boat, uniforms, etc. IT systems and network upgrades, security upgrades, video interview equipment upgrades are also being purchased. Body cameras for all our patrol officers. In-car camera and computer upgrades for all marked units. Improving staff complement. As of right now, we're not at full complement. We had 2 officers transfer last year to the ODP and other services, which created a staff shortage. Currently, we have 10 constable vacancies, and we're going to try our hardest to fill those vacancies this year. Secured additional funding from the MSP, which is the province of Quebec, to hire 5 more SAVE officers, which are Marine officers. We would like to have a full-time 24/7 Marine unit out on the water, effective this coming spring. Our new police station on Cornwall Island is currently under development, and it's expected to be completed by the end of this year. And as you know, we have no allocated funds for dispatch, so dispatch operates completely from our policing budget. The JIT, which is our organized crime initiative, there's no significant changes in this program. A new funding agreement was signed April 1st, 2023, effective to March 31st, 2028. That agreement funds 9 officers. Our SAVE Marine units, next slide. So new funding was secured from the MSP, which is the province of Quebec, totaling 6.1 million over the next 4 years. And that's to hire 5 full-time officers and purchase specialized equipment to increase surveillance and patrol capabilities. Increasing the Marine team by 6 members will allow us to patrol the waterways 24/7. Equipment upgrades, purchasing snowmobiles, ATVs, a Marine unit, another boat. Upgrade our engines for our older units that we have right now. Purchase a new heavy-duty truck to pull the trailer and boats. IT equipment and enhanced security and upgrades of the boathouse. So Mohawk Ambulance is now under the Department of Public Safety, and they have started an initiative called Grow Our Own EMTs. We hire drivers and provide them with training and mentorship to become EMTs. The goal is to have 24 permanent EMTs by the end of this fiscal year. Once this goal is reached, it will allow AMA to staff an ambulance each district. AMA has been receiving access funding for staffing since 2019. Emergency vehicles are needed. 1 more ambulance is needed to achieve full complement. We currently have, our goal is to have 6 ambulances so that we can rotate ambulances in each district. We continue to cover the entire territory of Akwesasne, including the southern part of the community, the St. Regis Mohawk Tribes jurisdiction, therefore increasing our calls for service, and revenue has doubled due to this. 3 staff are currently enrolled in the advanced EMT class and 1 in the paramedic class. 2 staff are enrolled in the certified lab instructors course. This will help us become more sufficient in training. The EOC has moved into our building as they are part of the Department of Public Safety. The move happened last year and went very well. The pandemic brought forth light for additional staff to the EOC was needed as it was staffed by 2 people. Currently have 3 people in that unit. We would like to have 4. Lots of training has been taking place to get these EMOs up to speed with requirements for active response. And we are exploring funding activities with Indigenous Service Canada for program support. Okay. So this is our budget that was approved for policing annually 10.5 million, with an expenses 10.5 million, expecting a surplus of 10,000. Compliance, we have no previous funding for compliance. This is our previous approved budget, but like I said, the new funding we received after this budget was approved. So we're not expecting a deficit of 282,000. Ambulance funding is 719,000. Expenses are 2.6 million with an expected deficit of 1.9 million. The EOC funding is 88,200 with our expenses at 96,000, expecting a deficit of 8,188. So like I said, we are looking for more funding, additional funding for the EOC. We have secured funding for the compliance department as well as new officers. So it's not reflected here, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go through the beginning part of the presentation that's in your packages again. We have the organizational structure that forms part of the first presentation. Am I walking through that or? Okay, I'll ask Donna Rompoint to walk us through that.
So, this is the organization structure of the organization. The branches and council are the elected leaders of the MCA, which are the political branch of the Mohawk government and is supported administratively by council operations. And there are the administrative branch is the executive services and council operations. We oversee the departments and programs in the MCA organization. They work council on issues and program issues or political issues for the betterment of the community. So the political branch and the administrative branch work together on any issues that arise in the community affecting departments, programs, and services. So the next slide is executive services.
This is a summary of the entire operating budget as presented and approved by Mohawk Council. So it's just a brief overview of all of the departments in a summary form. So by the way, my name is Heather Phillips. I'm the Director of Finance and Administration within the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne. Welcome everybody. So Mohawk Government Council only, their anticipated spending is 1.1 million with operating expenses of 1.8 million. That's a planned deficit of 687,000. Executive services, anticipated funding of 9.3 million. Operating expenses 7 million. Are mostly OLT/million for a surplus of 700,000. Economic development anticipated funding of 19 million, operating expenses of 20 million, projects of 20,000, with an planned deficit of 770,000. Now the 19 million in there is mostly fiber to the home and AIF funding. So it's not that they get 19 million for operations. For the Department of Infrastructure and Housing, which Leslie will be presenting later on, anticipated funding of almost 12 million or 11.5 million, operating expenses of 13.5, with anticipated deficit of 1.8 million. Department of Community and Social Services and anticipated funding mostly from IS and some from the province of Ontario. 17.2 million, expenses of 10.7 million. Special projects of 4.2 million, which is mostly income assistance, with a surplus of 2.2 million that goes into the other programs to help other deficits in other areas. Department of Finance and Administration, which is my department, is anticipated funding of 5 million, operating expenses of 6.1, with an anticipated deficit of about $1 million. The Mohawk Board of Education anticipated funding of 32 million, operating expenses of 25.2 million, special projects of 7.3 million, for anticipated surplus of 38,000. Congratulations, Don. Department of Justice, 3.5 million anticipated funding, expenses of 4.2 for anticipated deficit of 630,000. Public Safety, which Leanne just reviewed, 11 million total funding, operating expenses. That's probably more like, since of this date, that's probably more like 15, because they just secured some after the budget was done. So anticipated expenses of 13.5 million for a anticipated deficit of 2.1. So allocation from the 10-year grant, the surplus dollars that we have, we're applying 2.5 million to help cover all of these deficits. So on the bottom here, the proposed budget with a deficit of 201, that would be covered by a surplus from last year of 201 to balance the budget out. Next slide, please, Kelsey. So here, this is the Casino Rama OLG. You can't see it, I see Connie's face back there. But this is the anticipated OLG budget. This budget's been the same for about the last 10 years. And council, the finance committee is given their opportunity once a year. Is there anything in here that you want to change? So it doesn't change too much year to year. So prior to the pandemic, we were getting about 4.2 million from Casino Rama, but during the pandemic, this dropped to 2.6 million. So as you can see, we're allocating almost all of that. So the allocation for that money is we've invested in 2 buses per year for our Akwesasne and Mohawk Board of Education, and that's to make sure that our fleet is kept up to date. We always put money towards land claims to keep the claims going. So there's an allocation of 341. We do an allocation to our communications unit. You can see the great job that they do every general meeting. Akwesasne Community Fund, which is a call out to all community organizations to be able to submit proposals at 150. Donations and executive services. That's donations, say if you're just having a hard time and you need a little help, you can apply at executive services for a little bit of stipend. And also when somebody dies in the community, we make sure that the Mohawk Council gives some sort of donation to the bereaved family. So our yearly allocations that go out to community entities is each rep is $40,000. Carnival, powwow, museum get 5,000 each, and then the homemakers and tri-district get 15,000 each. So underneath here, which is MCA programming, we do offset some housing costs at 150,000. Housing does elders emergency repair program. Iroquois Caucus gets an allocation of 10,000. Opportunity funds matching dollars and council's opportunity to use that for matching proposals. If we're proposing somewhere, we need to put our own allocation in, that's what that's for. Discretionary allocation of 278,000. They see an opportunity that they want to go after. There's money sitting there for them to do that. And then the AHAP, Akwesasne Healing Assistance Program of 468. We do the church insurance at 7,000. Government staff, 150,000 for their salaries. The Youth Elders Committee, $10,000. Mohawk Language, 100,000. Thompson Island, 85,000, and then summer student hiring at 105,000. So our anticipated budget is 2.7 million. So we're running a slight deficit of 179,000. If these aren't used during a year, they just go back into reserves. Next slide, please. These are our current operating reserves as of March 31st, 2022, so last year. So our OLG Rama reserve is 34.8 million. Our Enbridge reserve is 2.6 million. Housing reserve, which is restricted to housing purposes, is 4.5 million. Education reserves is 17.2 million. Health reserves, 7.7 million. DCSS reserves is 8.6 million. Police reserves, 493,000, and then administrative reserves of 19.5 million. DTS reserves of 2.1 million for a total of 97.9 million. Okay.
There's councils.
I'll find out that who's next. My name is Chelsea Francis. I'm the government support manager for Mohawk Council. I manage the office that works directly with council. So here is our budget for the chief specifically. So you'll see that we have the council operations, chief salaries and benefits sitting at 1.2 million. There is no funding that it works for that, but down we have the chief's projects for OLG. This is mainly a flow through. So money comes in and it goes directly back out. Allocations for portfolio to departments, of portfolio to the department. So that's funding that we receive from each portfolio that helps support the chief's salaries. Council expenses, so these are the individual budgets for each chief. So these budgets mainly encompass their travel budgets. So you'll see things like, depending on which portfolio that they sit on, these numbers are derived based on history of travel as well as which department or portfolio they support. So some of them are a little bit different, most of them are the same. So essentially our total sits at 1.1 million with expenses at 1.8. So we run a general deficit of 687,000. Yeah.
Donna, you're next.
Good evening. My name is Donna Rompoint, the acting executive director, and I'll be presenting on the executive services component. So this is the structure for executive services. It includes the Mohawk government support led by Chief Manager Chelsea Francis, Aboriginal Rights and Research Office led by Manager Practice Cook Sunday. Employment programs is also just the flow through program. Nation building is led by Rachel Lazare, Manager Rachel Lazare. Office of Vital Statistics is led by Manager Tina Mitchell. And the support staff is supervised by administration in general, and they cover the mail and reception. Next slide. So the budget highlights for executive services this year will be results-based management, review of information management and executive services to reduce the use of paper and filing. We want to go more towards electronic files. The file implementation is ongoing as it impacts the budget. Operational change is an ongoing issue that we can look at which program we want to review. Every year we do a review. Development of leadership orientation program. We will be looking at a new orientation program for the new council in 18 months. So that takes time to develop. So we'll be doing that this year and into the next year. Strategic plan implementation is ongoing. We have started with the components of goals and objectives. So that will be ongoing with the directors this year. Contract review for professionals is also an ongoing task in executive services. The employment programs are summer programs and internships that happen every year at executive services for the organization. Aboriginal treaty rights, they deal with the Aboriginal and treaty rights claims, land claims, including the North Fork claim, the Seaway claim, the Dundee U.S. claim, Barnhart and Baxter Islands, Nutfield Tract. And the additions to reserve includes the Block 1 land on Gowanoga, which has been returned, but now the second step to that is to administer the land. Cairn Island and OPG ATRs are ongoing. And the education projects that are undergoing expansion is the cultural awareness training that's offered to CBSA, but it's also offered to other other interested groups that are interested in it. It's a very good training program. Technical support is given by Arrow to nation building working tables, such as the negotiations or the land code development. Mohawk support provides ongoing operations to the Mohawk Council elected leaders. Nation building provides technical support to the ongoing negotiations of the self-government agreement, as well as working tables on land, the fiscal, which is the financial agreement that they'll be working on, legal technical review on the self-government agreement, a communication strategy and pre-implementation plan for the self-government agreement. The capacity projects that nation building will be funding this year will be the access to information and possibly a law to develop, because we will need a law for access to information in the future, as well as updating the finance policy. The Office of Life Statistics provides the services on land and estates, membership, leases, and technical support to the ATR working groups and nation building working groups and other committees. So the budget shows that executive program and employment programs is a flow through of 450,000 with funding and expenses with no surplus or deficit. Executive services funding of 5.6 million with expenses of 1.6 million and projects of 3,094,000 with a surplus of 971,000. Mohawk Government Administration has funding of 365,000, expenses of 315,000, projects of 205,000, and a deficit of 155,000. The Aboriginal Rights and Research Office has funding of 183,000 with expenses of 500,000 and a deficit of 317,000. The Seaway claim has a budget of 313,000, as mentioned previously, from the OLG, and expenses of 60,000 with a surplus of 253,000. Nation building has a budget of 1.2 million and expenses of 765,000 with projects of 554,000 and a deficit of 40,000. And OBS has a budget of 1,034,000, which comes from island revenues, and their expenses are 1,035,000 and only small deficit of 1,399. And the overall budget for executive services is 9.3 million and expenses are 4.7 million and projects coming out to 3.8 million with a surplus of 709,000.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joseph Lauren Lozo. I'm the Director for Community and Social Services. And I'm here to present the budget for DCSS. So up here you can see we have the Department of Community and Social Services Administration, which is myself and my executive assistant. And then underneath we have Akwesasne Child and Family Services, the Community Support Program, and Akwesasne Family Wellness Program. So for the Department of Community and Social Services Administration, the budget highlights this year are continued enhancement of partnerships within and outside of Mohawk Council to better support the community through innovative and outside the box thinking, development of an oversight committee and working group for First Nations Child and Family Services to address First Nations priorities and preventative programs and services for Mohawk Council. Establishment of a unique children's special needs program that extends to the community and enhances current services offered by Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education. Continued review of Akwesasne Child and Family Services and Akwesasne Family Wellness Program policies and procedures, determine if they best serve the community. Development of architectural and construction plans for a new community space that will also house DCSS programs and services. Underneath, we have Akwesasne Child and Family Services. So newly phased in, but Akwesasne will be the first Indigenous community to have an Indigenous-led software system where the data that we're keeping track of is going to be housed in Akwesasne. It's been purchased. Implementation of this software will begin on April 1st, 2023. This implementation will take about a year and a half. A purchase of new spaces to conduct child and family services, as well as the development of construction plans for a new community space to provide child and family services. Further development of child and family preventative services to enhance current programs with First Nations Child and Family Service Agency allocation. Enhancement of our partnerships with Akwesasne Boys and Girls Club to provide summer and after school programs, as well as contribution to their capital project. So for Akwesasne Community Support Program, we're looking at enhancement of income assistance, basic needs and shelter through the support of Indigenous Services Canada, reintroducing food and gas subsidy and clothing allowance for this fiscal year. This is a temporary measure to address inflation in hopes that income assistance reform is completed and a new policy is created. Enhancement of the earnings threshold for income assistance clients and the time period of income assistance payments and benefits after receiving employment. Enhancement of employment assistance programs, so employment activities and employable activities. Administrative expansion to enhance capacity to deliver service as well. We have an unbelievably small team with high caseloads, so more support is needed for them. Akwesasne Family Wellness Program, development of partnerships within Mohawk Council to enhance service delivery for domestic violence and gender-based violence outreach and prevention by sharing resources internally. The main shelter building is being modernized and made more accessible through renovations to accommodate the diverse needs of domestic violence victims and their families. Continued renovation of the AFWP kitchen to construct a teach and learning kitchen. Repaving of the AFWP parking lot, reintroduction of the main shelter building to AFWP residential programs. That's all obviously pending completion of construction projects currently going on. Enhancement of services related to human trafficking as well. So in here we have the budget. So for Akwesasne Child and Family Services, we are going to be receiving $7.3 million with 6.3 in expenses and 932,000 in projects, with a expected surplus of 38,000. We received additional funding after the budget was already approved. So there is additional dollars included in this budget. Akwesasne Family Wellness Program, funding of 2.2 million, expenses of 2.2 million with a surplus of 4,700. We did receive, after the budget was approved, about an additional $1 million in funding for the shelter, which is why we're looking at enhancement of those services and supports. Community Support Program, funding of 6.7, expenses of 1.1, projects of 3.3 with a surplus of 2.2, which is the explanation for enhancement of the supports that program's offering and increase in income assistance. For DCSS administration, we have expected funding of 1 million, expenses of 1,039,000 and expected deficit of $24,000. So the total budget we're looking at is 24.5, expenses of 17, special projects of 5.1, with an expected surplus of 2.2. And as I said, there's additional dollars that were coming in from the shelter and from ACFS as well that are unaccounted, and just timing of when the budget was approved and when those allocation letters came in. Thank you.
Hello again. Department of Finance and Administration. So Department of Finance and Administration, I'm the director. I oversee finance led by Lisa Dornier, Human Resources currently led by Deb Porter, Communications by my wonderful Shannon Rumpoint over there, and then Information Services, who is led by Christian Francis. Next slide, please. So our projects that were scoped for the year. For myself, departmental review, I want to make sure my structure is sound and make any changes that I need to make and make sure they're done. Continued style implementation that kind of stalled during the pandemic as we were busy doing other things, so this is picking back up. Policy review overall, as part of the FAL, I have to have a bunch of policy areas done, which is an updated finance policy, human resource policy, and information services policy, so that all needs to be overhauled. And then an implementation of an ethical framework and a risk management framework. For my finance team, they're going to continue implementation of electronic funds transfer. They're still pursuing a paperless office, which will probably be done after we all retire. We're reviewing processes for efficiencies, that some things just take too long in our office, so we're trying to figure out how to make them better. And then the review of effectiveness. Are all of these rules that we're putting in place actually effective? We don't know, so we're going to actually start looking at stuff. And then implement new processing cycles. Within human resources, we really have to train our management team and our staff on all the policies that are currently approved and to make sure they're being adhered to. And then we're really struggling as an organization with recruitment. Like, this is a beautiful budget. It's $145 million budget. But even my optimism with the chiefs is if we don't get the staff to do this, we're not going to spend that much money. And we're really having, I think, last time I looked, there were 31 open jobs. So all of us are feeling a recruitment crunch. Cheryl, thank Cheryl over here. She was our health and safety officer. Her last day is tomorrow as our health and safety officer. So thank you. She's introduced us to active threat readiness training. I've taken it last week and it's just wonderful. So we're going to continue the work she started with that. And I think that it's beneficial not only to do the rest of the organization, but the community at large for whoever wants to participate, should be participating in that. Then we're looking at transferring all of our personnel records to the document cloud. We're continuing, we've done about maybe 40% salary review. We're looking to compare to market to make us more attractive because we do have people laying off because their salaries are more attractive out there. So we're really trying to do market-based salaries here. And then the continued development and implementation of a formal onboarding process. For communications, incorporate and improve virtual capabilities, more audio and video streaming, review and complete MCA-wide communication improvement initiative. This includes the implementation of engagement tools and how do we talk to the community better. Land claim and nation building communication strategies, and then a video library for everybody to access who wants access to it. And then information services. With the completion of the fiber to the home project, we're going to have to update all of our backbones in our buildings. So that's what they're looking at doing. So we're swapping out core switches, getting licenses to support everything, building up redundancy for power outages, and then redesigning everything to run more efficient on the network. And then the continued support of software. For my budget. I forgot the most important piece. So for the Department of Finance and Administration Communication Unit, funding of 175,000, expenses of 411, anticipated deficit of 236. For myself, funding of 2.6 million, expenses of 368. That's not all me. For a surplus over deficit of 2.2 million, surplus of 2.2. Finance funding of 191,000, expenses of 1.9 million, with a deficit of 1.7 million.
HR, no funding. Expenses of 1.5, a deficit of 1.5. Information services, 1.2 million in funding. This is all charged back internally, and then expenses of 1.9 for a deficit of 700,000, and then interest earned over the year of 900,000. So for our total, we're looking at an anticipated deficit of about $1 million.
Sego Donawaya Lahash, Director of Education for the Akwesasne Mohawk Board. Excellent. The structure of the Akwesasne Mohawk Board is our Board of Trustees, and then the Director of Education. We also have all of our services, Yohahio, and our post-secondary services, student services, 3 local schools, our child care programs, and our AMBI administration. Next one. So the Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education developed a strategic plan. We are now entering in our 5th year of the 5-year plan. Our priorities for this plan, we align all of our budgets to those priorities. We have 4 main priorities: Mohawk language and culture, student success, relationship building, and organizational excellence. All of our work that we do at the Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education fall into these 4 priorities. Okay, so for Yohahio, we're working on a certification process. So we're in the final stages of completing the certification to become our own Indigenous institute that would be recognized, so that no longer would people receive diplomas that say St. Lawrence College or Carleton University. They would be coming straight from Yohahio because we'd be recognized as one of the 9 institutes in Ontario. We're establishing pathways programs as well. We have both certified programs and interest level programs for those that are interested in taking and exploring options. We're increasing our physical space options. So we've acquired some portables, and we're doing an expansion to our trades building. We're doing a construction of an outdoor classroom and a longhouse replica. We are also in our final stages of our micro-credential programming options that are being developed locally and will be offered for credits for any type of upgrading or program options that people would like to explore, and you'll receive credits for those programs. Our post-secondary assistance program, we're continuing to increase our student outreach and information sessions. One of the things that COVID did for us was push us into that real digital age and help us to get everything online and have more online access. So if we look at one advantage that came from that, one benefit was that digital push. So we now have a lot of opportunity for people to apply online versus having to go in person all the time for information. So we're also providing sessions online for information sessions, working with student outreach counselors to help prepare you for entrance into post-secondary. We're hosting mandatory orientation sessions. We'll be offering it both in electronically and in person. And we're also introducing, we're very excited about the language grants that we're going to be introducing, because we have many people who have approached us and asked about language learning and wanting to take language programming. And some have already exhausted their post-secondary funds, but this is an avenue that they'd like to explore. So we have secured to have language grant that will be offered and open to people to apply to be able to explore more language learning. Our student services, we are trying to really strengthen those relationships between our students, our staff, and our families, so that we can support them better in our schools and in our childcare centers. We're expanding our intervention programs to address student needs. We are increasing our therapy services as well. So our occupational therapy, our counseling services, our speech therapy, so that we can offer more, again, both electronically and in person. We are also aligning services so that we address both the academic and the social needs. And we're implementing new assessment practices that really focus on assessment for learning. In Head Start, We're strengthening partnerships with the 0 to 6 and childcare to support social and developmental learning. We're very excited that during COVID, childcare became part of the AMBI umbrella, and that's given us the opportunity to really work right from birth when they enter a childcare setting to help programming go across the schools so that we can be more active in outdoor learning, in play-based learning. So we're also trying to include for this coming year more knowledge keepers in the classroom to enrich language and culture now that we're all back on site and we can have visitors to the schools. In our food and after school services, our partnership, and a big thank you to Department of Social for helping us to support the food services program, which is an unfunded program. And they will be funding this program and have provided us with revenue in order to provide free hot lunch. We've expanded our after-school programming with a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. And then we also have developed our own early years after-school programming. At Snaihne School and AMS School, we are increasing more outdoor cultural learning opportunities. We're also focusing on student intervention and growth. We are expanding our literacy and numeracy programming to support all of the varying learning needs. We are continuing to increase technology and virtual learning opportunities. We're in a big hurry for that fiber because our technology doesn't always go as fast as we need it to. We are also providing more mental health and wellness supports in our community schools, and I'm really excited to say that also when we talked about the active threat, we're working right now on a process of securing training for all of our students, teachers, and parents coming this fall at each of the schools. So yay. Thank you, Cheryl. Ganadago School, we're continuing to work on increasing Mohawk fluency levels. We're also continuing to increase the support because language is learned as it's modeled, and we believe that the more fluent speakers we can have in a classroom to model the language, the more the children will acquire the language. We're also expanding outdoor cultural learning opportunities. We're focusing on the development of curriculum and resources to support the teachers in the classroom. Unlike English teaching, you can't just go to a store and buy books off the shelf to teach. We have to develop everything. We're also focused on training for staff so that we can train the staff in how to develop oral fluency in the students. And we have additional cultural training as well that staff have been participating in. In childcare, we're developing a special needs service and supports. We're continuing to enhance the Ganyageha programming in our childcare centers. We're increasing the 0 to 6 enrollment, outreach, and programming networks. They are now have their own building in St. Regis. Continuing to increase self-regulation skills and adding mindfulness into pedagogy. Our RECEs, which is our registered early years childcare educators, we're going to be doing a salary review and policy development for those employees. Transportation. So we're updating our digital transportation request forms and reports. We are offering bus driver training opportunities at Yohahio. We are also in a big recruitment stage for bus and van drivers and monitors. So if anybody knows anybody that's interested, we're really looking because we're trying to improve, shorten the length of time that students have to be on the bus and have multiple drivers to be able to provide. Language and culture. We're continuing to expand the digitalization of our iMohawk website is one of them. So I hope everybody had an opportunity to look at that, but we have an iMohawk site, and we also had a big open house at our Mohawk Language and Curriculum Development Center yesterday. It was very well attended. We are developing Mohawk picture books for early years, so resources to use in the childcare centers as well. We're completing level 6 program and resource development for literacy. We are developing a social studies program that's completely culturally based. We also are expanding our music resources and our songs and activities that go along with those resources. Teacher training is focused on the next steps for Mohawk language. And we're also providing cultural workshops and camps that will be offered this summer. AMBI operations. So we're finalizing the AMBI policy revisions and our administrative framework for each of those policies. We are working to ensure transparent communication. We're continuing to develop partnerships to enhance learning opportunities with many different colleges and partners within the community. And we're also entering our final stages of our structural readiness endeavor. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Owen Benedict. I'm the Superintendent of Financial Operations. I'm here to present the Board of Ed budget. We have AMBI administration, total funding 19.5 million, expenses of 4.38 million, and projects of 230,000. AMBI administration, 18.9 million of our core funding is listed here to be applied to all of our AMBI programs. This to pay this administration budget may seem a little large, but it includes a lot of our building and operation maintenance costs and information technology, and a lot of small projects, targeted projects. And the small special project, 230,000, is the Akwesasne Mohawk Freedom School. And it's based on previous year's nominal role. Student services, we have 586,000 of funding. We have 2.3 million of expenses with a small deficit of 1.7 million. Childcare program, we have 4.2 million. And we have expenses of 4.045 million with a small surplus of 159,000. Heal, we have 1.96 million of funding, and we have 1.84 million of expenses, and we have small projects of 118,000 with a small surplus of $4,604. Elementary and secondary education, we have 277,000 in funding, and we have 6.9 million in expenses. And we have 2.389 million of projects with a deficit of 9.051 million. Special education, we have 640,000 of funding, and we have 1.84 million of expenses with a deficit of 1.2 million. Post-secondary, we have funding of 4.983 million. We have expenses of 349,000, which is just salaries. And for post-secondary expenses, we have 4.63 million. That budget balances. Mohawk language and culture, we have 104,500 of funding, and we have 1.483 million of expenses, and that's a deficit of 1.378 million for Mohawk language and culture. Transportation, we have 334,000 of funding. We have 2.047 million in expenses, and that generates a 1.7 million a deficit. So overall, we have a 32.6 million of funding for the Board of Ed as a department. We have expenses of 25.2 million and projects of 7.3 million, which has a small surplus of 38,000. I'd like to add that this budget just includes current operating dollars. It doesn't include any deferrals or reserves. It's we're in a pretty healthy situation right now. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amber Montour. I'm the Director of Health. Our department has over 250 employees. We're accredited by Accreditation Canada. We recently had them on site to conduct a survey, and our department received a 90% So we're really proud of our team. And we give our thanks to our licensed healthcare professionals and our leadership. So I'm here to share some of the highlights for our budget this fiscal year. These are in addition to our typical services. Our health administration is focused on recruitment and retention of healthcare professionals. We continue to prioritize workplace wellness through events and training opportunities. This year, we plan to hire 3 Indigenous health patient navigators, one of which will work with the Cornwall Community Hospital, one will focus on Quebec, and the other in New York State. This is a dual position with the hospital, and we're excited for the partnership. We've actually just closed the position and we'll be interviewing next week. We'll be conducting an employee and community wellness survey. Another program within our department is Jordan's Principal. This year, we've relocated. Jordan's Principal is now at the Benwetsleo Health Facility. We provide community support services. We found during the power outages that our elders require special attention. So this area of our department will be expanding this year. Part of this work includes our elder care packages, which we're thankful for the support from the Thompson Island Health Center. We help us to implement this new initiative and give out elder care packages. Our community health program has been our champion the past 3 years throughout COVID. And now we'll be working on resuming to pre-pandemic levels. Our holistic health and wellness program will be recruiting physicians, nurse practitioners, RNs, and RVNs. We're also looking to recruit providers in mental health, traditional medicine, prevention, and addictions. We are supporting new initiatives with prevention, such as the elder enrichment programming. You'll see some of the flyers we've shared recently for events at Sweetgrass Manor, led by Kyle Thompson. Next slide. The Sahati Holland and Akwesasne Withdrawal Management Center will be opening this year. We're currently undergoing renovations to the former group home building to meet our ministry requirements. We'll be recruiting healthcare providers. Our land-based healing program, led by Brandon David, will be establishing programs based in Ballinolder. We'll be purchasing land-based equipment and hiring 2 additional land-based healing specialists with new funding that we've received. Our Akwesasne non-insured health benefits will complete an RFP this year to update their software. The Akwesasne Lodge will focus on retention and recruitment, debriefing, workplace wellness, and access to land-based healing for both employees and the residents. Training plans, policy review, and communications. And as always, we'll adhere to our standards of care for quality improvement. Our home care, home support program will increase their clinical spaces in the 2 remaining districts. Akwesasne will implement the same approach as mentioned with Akwesasne, standardizing the policies at both centers, and are currently undergoing a roof renovation project. We will also be returning physiotherapy to the space, a service that was interrupted during COVID. This is our Budget. So our first program is community health, led by Leslie Bureau, program manager. Our services include maternal child health, diabetes management, and the environmental health officer. We have 3.3 million in funding and 2.4 million in expenses. So a surplus of 845,000. Health administration is led by myself alongside Tessa Jocko, our assistant director, Andrew Francis, our data health management coordinator, Shailene Gibson, accreditation manager, Jody Smoke, administrative assistant, and Ryan King, our health and social communications officer. There is new funding in this area under the anti-Indigenous racism navigator funding, which is 350,000. This isn't reflected in the approved budget because it just recently came in. Overall, we have 7.8 million in funding, 5.4 million in expenses, with a surplus of 2.4 million. The Withdrawal Management Center is a medically assisted detox, which will have 4 beds in the facility. This is led by Bonnie Bradley. And as I said earlier, the renovations will be completed this spring. The budget is 773,000, equal in funding and expenses. This is included in the DOH overall budget. Land-based healing, led by Brandon David, provides services such as cultural, self-care for community, help and support for grieving families, the canoe journey presentations and events on the land, including centering fires. Also sweat lodge ceremonies. There's new funding in this area for 500,000 for this year and next from the First Nations and Inuit Health Branch. Just recently been awarded this funding, so it's not reflected in the approved budget. Funding and expenses existing are through IFN, and they're 95,000. Next, we have Jordan's principal. Services include nursing and personal support services. Therapeutic services such as speech, occupational, physical, and physiotherapy. Specialized education supports, medical equipment such as wheelchairs, hearing aids, and mobility aids. Medical transportation, mental health, addiction, traditional and cultural and recreational support. The overall budget is 802,000 for operational expenses, and it's balanced. It's included in the DOH overall. Home care and home support is led by April White. She provides services in each district. She has 2.8 million in funding, 3 million in expenses, with a deficit of 223,000. The Akwesasne Lodge is led by May Lazor, program manager. It is an assisted living center with 602,000 in funding, 2.2 million in expenses, with a deficit of 1.6 million. Our community support services, CSS, includes Meals on Wheels, support for the Tri-District Elders Program, and elders support services such as personal care, foot care, and home maintenance. Funding is 1.2 million, expenses are 1.1, with a surplus of 50,000. Non-insured health benefits, led by Melanie Gibson, provide services for dental, medical supplies and equipment, pharmacy, vision, and patient transportation. We have 12.2 million in expenses and around 12.2 in funding, with a surplus of $572. Joe Winnicksday is led by Barry Lazor and Evelyn Brunet. It's a 50-bed long-term care center with 4.2 million in funding and 4.6 million in expenses. This area has a deficit of $379,000. The Holistic Health and Wellness Program is led by Delia McDonald. They provide primary care, traditional medicine, mental health, addictions, and prevention. There's new funding in this area provided by PNIB to develop a mental wellness team. The funding is $500,000 for every fiscal year until 2027. Overall funding for holistic is $4.8 million with 4.6 in expenses. Our surplus is $170,000. The Department of Health resolved any deficit areas with our surpluses. We have $337.4 million in funding and $36.1 million in expenses, giving us an overall surplus of $1.3 million. Okay.
But we have Joyce Kagan, the director of the Akwesasne Justice Department. As you can see, we have 3 major programs under the department, as well as legislative services. When you look at this, it might look like just 3, but I think the legislative services are a core part of all of this because they're providing the laws within the community. And we really want your involvement, if I can put a plug in for that, because we're going through priorities right now, and we really want your feedback on it. So under the Akwesasne Justice Department, we have the Akwesasne Community Justice Program, as well as the Akwesasne Court and the Akwesasne Representative and Advocacy Program. Next slide. So on here, if you look at community justice, their funding mostly comes from the Ministry of the Attorney General, and they provide a lot of services to the community, including an Indigenous court worker. They have a youth worker, a GLADU writer, which is very important in sentencing for people before they go before the judge and their sentence is handed out. So you'll have a GLADU writer who will look at the social economic impact of that person's history. And they present it to the judge so that they can realize everything that everyone has gone through in their lives so that they can give a sentence that is very fair. And then you have a family care worker that works with the GLADU principles, and they work together for aftercare. Then you have a victim support worker. I think it's important to know that we not only deal with offenders, we also deal with victims. And it's both housed in the same program. And we're trying to make sure that, those services continue and that they're in the community, working in the community with all the clients and the family members. Then you have the early release parole that is funded by the Correction Services Canada. And they look at whether or not a person wants to come out of parole early. And if they do, then they have to create a plan with the community. We have the Native Inmate Liaison Officer, and the Native Inmate Liaison Officer works right at the Ottawa Carleton Detention Center. So if there are things that the community, a family member wants to reach their person who's housed at the Ottawa Carleton Detention Center, then they're called NILOs, Native Inmate Liaison Officer, and they will work with us to not only provide cultural programming, but work with the family members for anything that might be needed during the release plan. With the Akwesasne Court, we're trying to get negotiations happening again, and negotiations have to happen between Canada, Quebec, and Ontario in order to recognize the court on the outside. It's recognized here, and we have that because the community put in the Akwesasne court law. So here, the court does have recognition. It's just when we look at sentencing and when we have traffic fines to have that recognized with the licensing agency within with the outside governments who give us our driver's license. We're also looking at training, additional training for our justices as we progress within the services we offer within the court. There will be appeals, and right now we're developing the appellate division of the court. There's one appeal that's ongoing, and as soon as we get the training for the justices, then we'll be prepared to open up an appellate division. We are always working on the court regulations. Right now, we're trying to expand that into the civil matters, and some of the civil matters are if a mom wants to have her child voluntarily cared for by someone else, then we're going to be able to design an agreement. And this is completely voluntary. It's not going to be anything that's set in stone until you go to family court. But this is a temporary solution to be able to meet the criteria within the schools who want to know who the caregiver is. We're also looking at expansion of dispute resolution processes. We now offer mediation services, and in fact, mediation services are being used by the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Court in some instances, but not entirely, and we need to get more mediators. SCANA orders are the peace bond orders. It's the equivalent of the ones under the criminal code, but we're calling them SCANA orders for people to keep the peace within the community. For justice administration, and I think we have to be clear that the compliance program has been transferred over to the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Services. So anything that has to do with enforcement of community bylaws, that will be with the compliance program. So if you have things like dog complaints, then make sure you contact the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Services. With environmental complaints, that is with the conservation officer, and the conservation officer has been transferred over to the environment program. So make sure that if you have those kind of issues, to contact the environment program. Again, we have the oversight committee. We changed from a legislative commission to an oversight committee. We wanted to be able to bring the chiefs to work on laws as well as community members, so that they know the pathway of going forward. So you have community representatives who will talk to the community, their district, about the laws and the developing of laws, and then on the council side at the chiefs meeting, so that they can work together and say, this is the best practice and we're going forward with that. So a good job to all the program managers, as well as Connie Lazor, who's leading the legislative development. We're creating a manual so that all the things that we have done or built at the Justice Department, like the law enactment procedural regulation, the checklist, standard charters, how anyone who wants to work on it, we have a template for that. And we'll use that template in the future so that you will know what the standards are. I think it's very important to make sure that we're consistent in everything we do, that there's continuity in the people who are working on it, and it's clear and concise. So what you write in a law, we want to make sure that the community understands it, and that going forward, we're able to interpret it better. We're also creating a manual for not only the Akwesasne court justices, but creating their resource guide, so that all the prior case law that has happened within the Akwesasne court will be provided, so that there's a continuity of those decisions. We partner a lot with the universities. This year, we're going to get 3 interns and their law students. And it's going to be, they're going to be able to help us so that we can reduce the deficit, and we don't have to hire as many people. So those law students will be working on things that we're not able to get to.
For example, nation building needs the law enactment procedure regulation to be turned into a law. And that's not on the priority list, but the interns that are coming in from McGill, we have 2 that are coming this summer. They're going to be working on that, and that will be a priority for them. It's outside the scope of the priorities for that the community will set, but this is something that the interns can do. So when they're ready to bring it to council, and when nation building is ready to say there's a self-government agreement, then we can offer the law that has been drafted, and that will then go through the law enactment procedural regulation. And the 2 things that they're going to be working on is the law enactment procedure regulation to put that into a law, as well as referendum regulations to put that into a law. And those partnerships that we create, there's a lot of things that the universities want to do with us, but we make sure that they have an oath of confidentiality, that the material they develop belongs to Akwesasne, and that any communications, the communications have to be approved by us in order for them to be able to write this on their blog, because that's some of the things when they get funding through their scholarships or through a fellowship, then the fellowship wants them to write a blog on what they have done. And so we review it before it goes out. The Akwesasne Representative and Advocacy Program that has been established 2 years now, and they're doing an excellent job in and they're located at 55 Water Street. You might have seen some of their initiatives that they have done, like the Orange Bench and the Open House. And we're going to, in the new year, we're going to look at providing a conference for other band representatives. And band representatives are people who represent Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, the band, and in other places, maybe Ganawage or the Six Nations, and trying to get together on what the new initiatives are, rolling out what has worked and what hasn't worked. For example, we have a custody agreement between the parents as well as the represented ARAP and CAS, and that's working out well. So lots of things going on with the Akwesasne Justice Department. Here you can see that, the other thing that under Justice Administration, which was really important to the community, was to try to get back a legal counsel so that we can help community members with their wills, with their power of attorney. Council has said, yes, that will happen again. And we're able to get some funding from ISK for the child's rights law that will help bring the 2 services together. And it's a very important part because we've heard from the community, they want this service, and now we're able to provide it. So the council said, yes, we agree, and they're letting us handle it, and you're going to see a request for proposals to try to solicit legal counsel again. Justice Administration, we have 418,000 in funding. We have a little bit more. There's a deferred amount of probably, I'm guessing 200,000, which will bring the deficit down. But our overall deficit within Justice Administration is 392,000. ARAP, they received $2.1 million and their expenses are $2.1 million. So they're balanced. Community Justice Program, they have a small deficit and it amounts to $31,000. The court, their expenses are $262,000. We're able to get a little bit of money from Department of Justice Canada in the amount of $35,000, and that's to assist with prosecutorial services. So their deficit will be $206,000 minus that $35,000. So overall, our deficit is $630,000.
0. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Leslie Pablo. I'm the acting director for Department of Infrastructure, Housing, Environment, DIHE as it is. So what you see here is the layout of what the department is. We have at the top administration, and we have below various sectors of maintenance and facilities. We have roads, water and wastewater, capital projects, housing administration, which also includes rental facilities and environment. Slide, please. Okay. So under the infrastructure, housing, environment, DIHE, the administration sector, the budget highlights are as follows: to effectively manage MCA's capital planning process and provide project management services for all capital projects. To improve the community services for all infrastructure sectors by meeting standards and applying daily management processes. Great avenues of communication to intake community requests for services related to DIHE. Continue lobbying strategies for capital investments towards a 10-year lobbying strategy and 20-year capital plan. And to initiate future and current planning processes for upgrades and improvements to infrastructure and community administration buildings, as well as incorporating and adding housing subdivisions. Next bullet, to grow our department capacity building through hiring additional staff and recruitment. Next one is to provide direction to the DIHE sectors, building maintenance, water, wastewater operations, road services, asset management system, reporting, housing, and environment programs. To lead, administrate, manage, and implement delivery service for these operation divisions with a strong focus on public health and safety, service delivery to the organization and to the community, and continued compliance towards current standards and regulations. The DIHE continues to work with internal departments to assist with space needs concerns as well. So under building maintenance, we have are led by 3 managers. We have Clayton Benedict, Tony Benedict, and we have currently a vacant position. The mandate for this is to continue to provide annual repairs, equipment replacements, and retrofits that are ongoing. Plan to meet aged MCA buildings and assets. DIHE will continue to work to assess and implement the operational review of ETS, which is DIHE services and service agreements to ensure full operation and expectations are met. Yearly operating costs are rising due to inflation, and with additional buildings being planned to accommodate growing space needs, calls for the need to hire additional staff and resources. Garbage costs have increased 3 times more. We've just received the submissions for, we've learned that. DIHE will initiate plans to seek additional funding, including an environmental waste management program coordinator. That's to come. Next slide. Under the roads program led by Snaihne Jacobs, the department mandate is to continue roads maintenance, repairs, snow clearing, required seasonal servicing for the community. We receive additional dollars from MCQ for operations, but need continued renewal and lobbying by council for additional funds. Next item is continues also to provide some funds to help shortfall the annual road service, such as ditch drainage and street light repairs for all 3 districts. The multi-jurisdictional table has been established with various funding stakeholders to discuss working together. This includes MTO, MTQ, is Canada DIHE Council, with the intent to seek funds for our projects. Under the water to wastewater sector is led by John Adams. The water department mandate is to continue to provide for the community safe, clean drinking water, as well as the effective treatment and disposal of wastewater. This is implemented by exercising jurisdiction over the implementation of water and wastewater management standards, protocols, and regulation by participating in testing and reporting requirements. Provide performance inspections completed annually to verify the performance of the systems and update system information. To provide continuous annual repairs to existing MCA infrastructure and expanding as funds become available. So for this year, the various projects include expected throughout the year, water and wastewater plant repairs, continuing upgrades, rooftop heater, turbine pumps, valves, turbidity meters, equipment upgrades. To budget for additional costs for the water line extension requests for community members. Will also is important that will continue this year, as well as emergency repairs to existing water line. Next slide. Under the capital projects for 23-24, the current projects underway are either have been budgeted and have been deferred to this year, which is just completed from last year, late last fiscal year, or there's also listings of projects being planned for this year. So first item is Akwesasne roof replacement. This is funded by Health Canada and ISK. This is now complete. The second phase is underway. We have magnetic door locks, fire alarm, nurse call station. It's funded by Health Canada and ISK. That is 60% complete now. Wade Lacrosse Memorial Rail reconstruction, phase 2, funded by ISK. Substantial completion has been achieved. They will return to do remedial work in May, project completion end of May, early June. Park Street, Hilltop Drive, sewer and road reconstructed, funded by ISK. They'll be coming back, returning completion of curbing, asphalt, and paving the final layer, along with remedial work. That will be done in May, completion end of April. The Hogansburg Volunteer Fire Department Station number 3, new building. The funding source is to be determined. This discussion is ongoing with ISK. Detailed drawing package near completion. DIH is in discussion with ISK Capital Project Management to help seek funds. The MC Police Station, Gowanoga, secondary location. Detailed design is 90% complete. This is a P3 partnership project. Hamilton Island Bridge detailed design, funded by MOT, which is Ministry of Transportation. DIH is in progress of obtaining an engineering company for design services. The design for this bridge will introduce planning discussions for new bridges for Snaihne. DIH will then seek funds for construction dollars. The LED streetlight installation, McCumber Road South and North. This is funded by the Mohawk Council Community Trust, Settlement Trust. The LED streetlights for Gowanoga, Recreation Basketball Court, and portable washrooms. The project is underway to be tendered for construction soon. Funded part by Canadian Urban Institute funds and by ECSS approved funding source. New Snaihne School, detailed design underway for paint tender drawings and core application with ISK. Currently using minor capital to cover this fund with the intent to be reimbursed through ISK. Traffic study for the 3 districts will be using minor capital for this project with the request to be reimbursed through ISK. Roads new sand salt dome for Gowanoga. Detailed drawings are underway funded by ISK. DIH will be implementing detailed design for Yohio Road, Fisherman's Lane, and Sunday Drive in Snaihne. And Cuddly Street, Sweetgrass Lane, and Venatico. This is part of the FENET priority and will be applying to this. Next slide. Under the housing administration, this is led by Charmaine Baldwell. She's associate director for DIHE. She's not here today, so any questions come for housing will have to be you can reach her through our office. So under the budget highlights, under MCA loans, new construction, and upgrade of loans, the MCA Bank of Montreal loan guarantee, CMHC administration, Emergency Repair Program, the RRAP, RAP, Housing Rental Fund for Handicap, Elders Emergency Fund. Under the rental and rent to own units, there are 107 rental units, 78 band-owned rentals, and 29 Section 95 units. 8 more units to be completed this year. ISK lot servicing, including the Hawthorne Road extension. Hawthorne Road extension, sorry. More units are being planned. 71 rent to own units. So under the environmental program, which is led by acting program manager Kayla Sunday, the core services include environmental assessments, GIS mapping, conservation, research and consultation. Next page. The environment, they continue to work in conjunction with various agencies, which in turn provides funds for operations, salaries, and supplies. So under this is there a list of additional let's see, additional vendors and various organizations that they deal with. Says Indigenous Service Canada is Ontario Regional Waste Coordinator. This is carrying about our waste initiative. Next bullet, Ontario Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. The Ontario Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks St. Lawrence River Strategy for a beautiful and healthy St. Lawrence River, a framework for community action project. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Indigenous Marine Liaison Officer, building meaningful relations with Indigenous communities and organizations for the purpose of the Canadian Coast Guard Program and Ocean Protection Plan projects. The Watersheds Canada, the Shoreline Restoration in the St. Lawrence River, the Aboriginal Fund for Species at Risk, Aquatic Project Understanding Sturgeon to Protect Our Future, the International Secretariat for Water, Parks Canada Contribution Agreement, the AFSAR Turf, which is reclaiming connectivity through Black Ash Stewardship, International Joint Commission, development of a framework for fish consumption advisories, the St. Lawrence River case study, Clarkson University, which is called Reason River Environment and Sensor Observation Network. The project is called Understanding Ecosystem Change on the St. Lawrence River, Benedalawana. To support community strategies for well-being, will be reapplying for supplies, etc. in summer 2023. Ontario Power Generation, Fish in Your Shore Survey, Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, Regional Assessment of the St. Lawrence River Area, AFSAR EELS and MECP funded containment studies will be ongoing. Guardians funded for secondary conservation officer. This is the Department of EIHE allocation, budget allocation for administration facilities, funded 1.089, expenses of 1.008, with a deficit of 80,478. Capital projects will be presented to council on a separate budget. These are seeking funding allocations. DTS admin 170,176.37 with expenses of 916,262 with a deficit of 745,625. DTS building maintenance 865,605 funds, expenses of 653,947 with a surplus of 211,658. Education facilities 1.5 million. The funds expended expenses of 1.8 with a surplus deficit of 314,000. Garbage and fire protection funding of 1.082 with expenses of 459,000 with a surplus deficit of 623. Environment 1.09 funded expenses of 1.3 in expenses with the surplus deficit of 226,000. Housing is funded with 1.7 million, expenses of 1.728, expenses. No surplus. Health and social facilities, we have 1.732 funded with 2.445 expenses, 712,000 in surplus. Roads, we have 739,000 funds funded with expenses of 1.2 million with a surplus deficit of 507,000. Water and wastewater, we funded at 1.589 million and expenses of 1.798 million and expenses with a surplus deficit of 209,000. So a total for GIHE funded is 11.599 million, expenses of 13.4 million with a surplus deficit of 1.8. Thank you. Yeah.
Director of Economic Development, Kylie Tarbell, did not be here tonight, so I was kind enough to do this for her. So economic development, here's the organizational structure of economic development. Underneath economic development, we have the arena, which is led by Martin, Peachtree Mall, that is managed by Allie Oates McCumber. Thompson Island, the coordinator is Jessica Shenandoah, and tobacco cannabis, Allie Oates McCumber, should be back, giving room back there. Next slide, please. You're welcome, Allie. Economic development, so we're looking at to determine the future structure of the department, because they are looking and working on a separate economic development corporation outside of Mohawk Council. Capacity development and training for Akwesasne, they administer the small business grant. And then they want to adapt to technological delivery of programming and community engagement. They also administer the Quebec Indigenous Initiative Fund. It was previously known as the Quebec ECDEV grant a long time ago. And that's, I think there's a 10 million, I think there's, next slide will show how much is there. Peachtree Trade Center Administration Arena, the facilities are open and operating since the pandemic. Maintenance and facility upgrades, modernization and grounds improvement. They're doing workshops and camps for sporting activities, but they are a continued deficit and have been for a long time. Improved telecommunications using the fiber to the home in all three districts, Snaihne, Gannataga, and Gowanoga. $6 million left to finish this project, and they have a stop deadline of September. It has to be all wrapped up by September. Light up occurring as soon as possible. They're still waiting for the main connection to go under the water from St. Regis to Cornwall Island. New proposed cell phone tower and Snaihne with Rogers Communications. Thompson Island receives no core funding and they are reliant on OLG. Camps are being scheduled for the summer and fall, and they're applying for grants for the core operations. Language and culture revitalization is a priority for programming, and workshops are open to community members. The tobacco cannabis application review, licensing and social responsibility fees collection. They're monitoring compliance of licenses to ensure public safety. Currently, they have 12 cannabis retailers and 3 licensed cultivators. Next slide, please. So this is their budget. Funding of 135 for arena, expenses of 820 for an anticipated deficit of 684. Economic development 11.6 million in funding. That includes the Quebec ECDEV fund, which is about 5 million, and then the monies for the fiber to the homes on the bottom. It's about a $10 million grant there. So, but that's a straight in and out. So whatever people apply for, it goes right through. Tobacco cannabis funding of 1.3, expenses of 1.3. So again, whatever comes in goes right back out. And they do get a little bit of fees here for their tobacco quota, which is not being used to its fullest extent. Thompson Island funding of 160, expenses of 368 for an anticipated deficit of 208,000. And the fiber to the home, whatever they spend, we get reimbursed for. So for total funding of 19.3 million, expenses of 20 million, special projects of 20,000, so complete surplus or a deficit of $707,000.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation on the MCA budget. Was there another one, Donna, that we wanted to go through?
No, I just wanted to, say the closing for the questions,
Okay.
regarding questions. Just wanted to thank everyone for coming here today to listen to the budget 2023-2024 budget presentation. We appreciate your time and attention to it. And I would like to conclude by expressing my appreciation to all the directors and managers who helped in developing this budget and with the great support of Department of Finance and Administration, and to the council for approving this budget for 2023. And so if there are any questions, we can direct them to the appropriate departments director.
Okay. All right, thank you. How about a round of applause for the presentation this evening? Okay, it is 8 p.m. now. I know that there are some business that we wanted to discuss broadly with the community and council. So I will open it to a few questions in relation to the budget. And then we'll move into business from the floor. I know that the presentation has been handed out. The contact information is there for further follow-up directly with one of the department directors or the executive director or members of council. But I will take a few questions now in relation to the budget presentation that has been just made to you over the last 2 hours. Yep. We'll ask you to speak into the mic again so members can hear on the Zoom your question.
So thank you to the directors and everyone who worked on the budget for council for showing up tonight. I do have some questions that I came to mind while I was listening to your presentation. When I looked at the public safety, or when I heard the public safety, it's kind of disheartening that the fire department isn't even on public safety. How does that happen? I believe there was an org chart that was passed by council not long ago that accepted the fact that HABFP was, or the fire department was not on there. I found it strange that your police commission chair was signing that also. Because in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the chair is only, the commission itself is only responsible for the operations of the police force. Nothing to do with the public safety department. That was made clear when that position was being offered. So I'm just wondering if council would consider formally posting that position now, the public safety director. It doesn't seem that all the other programs under that department are getting the assistance they need. Now, there's no need to go into the department to fix anything. I'm talking about the fire department, to go in and fix anything. But the thought behind the department being created was to provide a liaison for the fire department through council when funding is needed. That's not happening, and I don't know if it's happening for your ambulance and your emergency management. So I think that to properly and fairly have all the programs represented in that department, it might be time to actually hire a public safety director who's not the chief of police. It's an oversight that shouldn't be happening. I also want to say that I see that in this year's budget highlights from capital projects, it looks like the fire department may finally get that building that is in dire need. And I'm hoping that you all take the time to stop in there and understand what they're talking about and understand what that building looks like, because nobody does that. Their equipment, you mentioned earlier about some of their equipment coming from the trust fund. Well, we did that with one truck, and council this year, I believe, did another truck. Understand that that won't do much if the roof falls down on it. It's getting to that point. They provide a service to this community that is volunteer. But yet they can't get the attention they need for that facility. I thank you, Leslie, for doing the work that she came to do with that department over a year ago. That project was at the place for the PAR application to go. That project design was at 99%. It's been 18 months. What's going on? We have to look at what our dire needs are here. That department serves everyone. You understood that when our power failed so many times. They didn't hesitate to go out there. One was even attacked by a dog. They went right back out there. Fire called, actual fires happened when that power came on. They went back out there. I didn't see a thank you to those folks. They serve this community. They don't hesitate. You need to stop hesitating for the funding. We need to find that money. Bridge finance it. It's an opportunity. There's also, I see a budget item there for garbage and fire protection. Over $1 million is funded, has funding. Only 459,000 is in expenses. So I'm wondering what's the allotment to the fire protection, can that be increased if there's such a surplus of 23,000? And just because I'm never making general meetings and I'm actually here now, I just wanted to know what council members are doing. You know, I do see some reports, but not many. I know there's a lot that have been traveling lately. I'd like to know what your traveling is, and you don't have to answer me tonight, but I would like you guys to consider reports that tell us what the event is for, how it will benefit us when you're gone, and bring back a report that lets us know what's going on with that travel, and does it benefit us, and was it worth the trip? I do have a question about the Dundee on monies. Has that been decided to go into a trust? And I'm not sure that I might have missed that too, if they had gone back to the community for input on what to do with those monies. Or is this a process that's going to happen while that's still being decided? But we do know that trust funds are hard to access. And maybe at some point we can get an update with the negotiation for hydro. I missed power for 80 hours in the last billing series, but my bill was full of $500. And I'm hardly ever home, right? Working, sleeping, you know, one person. So I don't know how that rate got to that, but it's kind of strange. So I'm wondering, have we considered looking at a partnership with Hydro that sees us train folks from here, house some equipment, and work with them? Because we know that on that 44-hour span, everybody kept looking at the website and it kept saying they were en route, and we were getting more frustrated when it would be another delay. Well, honestly, they're en route, but they're doing the work along the way. So we could be working from here to going that way and catching up to them. We might get our power back quicker or sooner than later. I'm just wondering if you guys would look at considering something to that caliber that provides, you know, some capacity development here. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So I'll respond in order of some of your inquiries or questions, just on the Department of Public Safety. So, you know, I want to acknowledge the work that the fire department does, all of our firemen in the community that they provide to the invaluable service to our community. With respect to the Department of Public Safety, the reason why the fire department's not in there, because they're not a program per se of Mohawk Council. The Mohawk Council does provide, you know, a contribution to the fire departments to help with their overhead. But acknowledging your comments around the department, I'll say that the creation of public safety department is ever evolving. And this was done, you know, a little bit prior to the pandemic and hasn't really taken full fruition of what it potentially can be. So we acknowledge what, you know, what you have, what you've added on that, and we'll continue to look at, you know, how that involves into a full department to support not only the police services, but all the other services that, you know, serve the community, including the Hogansburg Akwesasne Volunteer Fire Department. Because they are a vital service, maybe not a program of the MCA, but they definitely have a role in the overarching of the community safety. So we'll take that definitely in. On the police commission matter, definitely we'll take a look at that. That's some governance reform that needs to happen in relation to that. The mandate of the Akwesasne Police Commission is specific to the police services, not the Department of Public Safety. So it's part of the evolution of all of that. In relation to the, you know, the design for the fire department, I know that this has come forward at the district meeting. This is something that council's been talking about. We do have it on the submission to Indigenous Services Canada for funding. We are receiving a presentation in a couple of weeks from the department on the status of the application itself. So we understand administrative steps that are happening within the MCA. And then following that, we're going to be setting up a meeting with the fire department members, representatives, to discuss, you know, status of it and, you know, the final design as well. So that has to be, that process is happening. I know that it's not happening as fast as people want it to, but I can tell you that it is a priority for us, and we're moving it forward as best as possible. On the travel reports, definitely the members of council have heard what you have to say in relation to that. And you know that I'm a big advocate for, you know, reporting, because I provide that every month for transparency purposes, but the members have heard what you have to offer on that. On the Dundee monies, so council did pass a resolution to say that we're going to go down the trust avenue. So we had two considerations. One was a limited corporation, or the trust aspect. No, I just mean the financial vehicle. Council has decided that we're going to go down the trust route. What the priorities and how that will look is going to be done through an engagement process with the community. That has not started yet, but it will start this summer, right? And I can tell you that on your comments about the existing trust being hard to access monies, that's a lesson learned. And we've talked a lot about that, our council, like what works in the existing trust, what doesn't, and how can we ensure that the next trust doesn't have those same barriers. So I can tell you that, you know, that's something we definitely want to make sure that people don't feel it's difficult to get access to the money, but it's also hitting the priorities that the community has set. And then on the Quebec Hydro, we know that this continues to be a challenge. We are actually meeting with some folks tomorrow with Quebec Hydro about the current situation. You know, we've gone back and forth with them. We've had some, you know, different advocates raising this with Quebec Hydro about the reliability of the power, right? And you know, it has unfortunately been a continued issue in the community, but they're getting longer. You know, it used to be a couple hours. Now, you know, the last one was you know, much longer than a few hours. So we are working with them to find solutions. In fact, today we hired an independent electrical engineer to do an assessment of the transmission line itself. So they were actually out there with one of the members from Snaihne today in some sort of ATV thing that floats and goes into muds and whatever. So they've taken him out there. They're doing a full inspection of that to give us a full report that's not done by Hydro-Quebec, so that we can, you know whether or not what they're saying is valid, and also for them to give us an option. You know, does this have to be replaced? Because if this has to be replaced and it's, you know, $5 million, then we know what we're going to be asking of Quebec Hydro and of the government of Quebec. So we're doing that right. That happened today. Tomorrow they'll be in the Dundee area looking at some of these substations and all the other equipment that supports the line coming into the community. That's only one aspect. There's some other, you know, things that the council's working on or looking at as to support the overall electricity needs of the community. So I hope that's captured. The other aspects that have been proposed to council is the creation of Akwesasne electrical system that supports the entire community, north and south. This is something that's not new all entirely, but it's something that is being considered again. Okay, you're good with that, Connie? Okay, all right. Go ahead. Just gonna need the mic and.
Clarification, under the reserves. Finance, director still here, whatever, under the reserve section. So all these dollars that are identified, OLG, random reserves, 34 million, Enbridge reserves, 2.6 million. Is this what we're saying we have sitting in the bank somewhere, these reserve dollars?
Yes.
Okay, so Connie just asked a lot of questions that connects back to a lot of money. So we have all these reserves sitting here, and we all know electrical issues is our number one. I've been coming to these meetings for years, hounding you guys about the Enbridge dollars and spending some of that. We need a fire station down Snaihne. I've been hounding about Enbridge dollars on roads, fixing roads, things like that. Enbridge dollars, the contract, 20-year contract should be coming pretty much close to an end. Is our team renegotiating that? Why can't some of these reserves be identified and moved and set aside? I guess I'll say in another reserve pocket for priority challenges or items outside the scope of the departmental budgets, which some of them connect back to a departmental budget like DIHE, for instance, needing to help find dollars for a new fire department. So you got 2.6 million of Enbridge dollars sitting there. 2,641,000. Take $1 million of it and use that as bridge financing, as Connie suggested, to find dollars. This whole budgeting process of 97 million in reserves. Why isn't it being used to help us with some of our problems? My only comment is nice budgets presented by departments. They're all hurting and needing funds. And is the ISC reserves that envelope of 19 million, the 10-year agreement? As you said, we'll address that when I asked it earlier. Is it include the 10-year agreement funds? Is that the ISC dollars?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. So we know what the envelope looks like of 19 million. Is that reserve of 19 million money we still have that we could spend from the envelope, or is it attached back to those budgets that were just presented?
Some is, some isn't. Some is internally restricted and some is not as well, including the Rama OLG reserve. Some of that is internally restricted, bulk of it is not. So I mean, yeah, there is the ability to make investments where needed. So I mean, it definitely is, you know, the challenge is that, you know, is the capacity and the ability for us to deliver on several priority projects. I mean, it's not a secret that every industry is looking to hire people to support their organizations. Ours is no different, right? So, I mean, and it has been several years, you know, that's, you know, we haven't always been in a good, tough financial position and I mean, in a good financial position, excuse me. So it definitely is something that we need to figure out how we can more effectively support community programs much quicker. But I think I acknowledge what you have to offer, and you know, it's something we have to really look at how we can roll out projects much quicker.
Cheryl's question,
Yep.
Cheryl, of that 19, whatever million,
Okay.
in that administrative reserve, only 2.5 is being applied to this year's budget. If we need it, and we will only need it if we can fill all of the empty positions we have in the organization right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go to just general questions now from the community. It's 20 after 8, so I know that we said a couple questions on the budget, and then we'll go to other business from the floor. So is your question in relation to the budget? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted clarification as to what you said. What would be an example or restriction for accessing that 34 million OLG reserves?
Specifically, there's money set aside, what do we call future generations? That means that pot of money will always be there without reducing the principal. That's internally restricted. So it's about, I don't know, $8 million. And what happens with that money specifically is any interest generated off of it goes into the special needs fund. So that's money that's internally restricted that council has committed to not spend other than the interest. And that's kind of for basically that future generation.
So do you have a percentage with regards to how much would be available, say, to do some bridge financing for some major projects?
Probably about, you know, $22 million of that, potentially.
What would you need in order to do an application.
So, I mean, it all boils down to the project, right? If we want to talk specifically about the, the new fire department, we need to land on the design and the cost before we can figure out how to finance, right? So we haven't landed on a final design, nor do we have actual costs for construction. So then once we have all of that landed, then we can figure out how we're going to pay for it. Right. So that's where the process that we're at right now is the design and the cost. We have to narrow that down to as close as actual as possible.
Why is it taking so long?
I don't know that. Did you want to add to that?
Yes,
Yeah, go ahead.
We have all that completed. We were through meetings with, sorry, I forget. Leslie. Even you yourself sat in on some of the meetings, Abram, and our project is, you know, the cost of the project, 6.7 was 6.7 million. Probably 20% on top of that now, so the cost is raising every year. We've been at this for almost 2 years. We finally start coming to meetings to get this project moved in, which it should have been moving a long time ago, and now we're fed up with it. It's pretty sad to even be here begging for money.
Thank you for that. I can tell you that we support the project. We need to narrow down the detailed design and the tender ready, what they call the tender ready documents, which means that we take this tender ready documents and send it to contractors so they can provide us with a cost to build the station. That's the process we use for all capital projects. That process is happening right now. And to my understanding, that it's not completed yet. So I mean, allocating the money is one aspect of it. The design and the documents to support the build, that process is happening now. Go ahead.
The other process that's also happening too is that the fireman can also walk off too. As he walks out the door, who's gonna replace him? The other area that we have too is that $100,000 was also allocated for recreation committee programs too last year. We still haven't gotten our lights over here too. It's not mostly the plan too. So what's happening there? Where do we stand?
I don't know specifically which
So those are things that
$100,000.
you need to look at before you finalize your budget.
Yeah. There have been some significant allocations to the district recreations in the last couple months that, you know, if there's monies that we've committed previously and have not flown for whatever reasons, we definitely can look into why that hasn't happened. Yeah.
But there is also a very dire need for our fire department.
We don't dispute that at all. We want to be able to land at the final design of the project so that we can then, move the process forward.
How
Acknowledging,
can we do it as a community too? And it's nice to know that this is.
yeah. Unfortunately, the process within the MCA has been slow. I mean, again, as I said earlier, we're receiving a presentation update from the administration on this design. And then the process, after that, we'll be meeting with representatives of the fire department so that we can finalize that. And you have to understand as well, we are going to try to find money from the federal government or provincial governments to support the build as well. If it's a $7-8 million project, if the federal government puts in half, but when we receive money from the federal government, they want to make sure that all of the assessments were done, that it was, it has a detailed design, that it was tendered out and all this process before they'll provide contribution as
How
well.
soon can we have a meeting for it then?
We have the presentation from the administration to us, I think within the next 3 weeks, and immediately after that, we'll have a meeting with the fire department.
So why wouldn't they be allowed to sit in
Uh,
with the administration part of it? Why wouldn't they be able
Well,
to sit with that?
I think there was an
To
acknowledgement.
know what is happening, where there is a block. And they're sitting there, and then it's gonna delay again, and
Mhm.
delay and delay, and then by that time, they're gonna be all walking off.
Yeah. Well,
And
I,
who's gonna take care of us after that?
well, there have been meetings. I think there was just an acknowledgement that they have been meeting with Leslie, which is the administration. So those conversations have been happening as well. It's just council hasn't had a briefing.
Even today, they're out there,
Mhm.
they were out there with even the helicopters that are helping them too. But all these guys are out there. We have to help them too.
Yeah.
But we can't just say, yes, we can.
Yeah.
But we need to have some action happen.
Mhm.
So that they don't walk all these doors.
Yeah.
Because once they walk out these doors, we don't know if we can give them that.
Mm.
But yes, they're willing to go out there in all hours of the night. All hours of the day.
Yeah. We acknowledge the work that they're doing, and we're trying our best to be able to respond to the ask to help design and build the new fire departments. There's not one person that sits here and says that, you know, we're not gonna do this project. Unfortunately, things just do not move as quickly as we'd like, but we're doing the best that we can. And it's not a reflection on whether or not we support the fire department. I can tell you that, you know, exemplary department here, we want to be able to help them. Unfortunately, process gets in the way, but we're trying to work through that.
So you'll contact us next week at least to know what is happening.
After we have the meeting internally with the department and the administration presents to council, then yes, we're going to be scheduling a meeting with the department.
Okay, and the 2 follow-ups that I have to.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Can I offer something? Can I offer something? I'll put on this mic. Sitting here listening, obviously, and maybe just wanted to offer some minor inputs. For me, what's obvious in front of you, this whole LG, is it not? $34 million sitting there. I know I've tried to get an accounting of OLG more than once. What exactly has come into in my rough estimation, it's upwards of $95 million plus. That's a lot of money. Council's heard my spiel on this often enough. They hate my guts for me saying it, but I keep on bringing it up. And I wonder, and I always said when I first came in, if people are not aware, prove me wrong. Because when that fund came to be, it was negotiated by Francis Stamp to the chief of Ontario. And at that time, language and culture was at a very, very poor state. A lot of First Nation communities were losing their language, including us at the time. There were some that lost their language. So from that table, they thought, and they said that the #1 priority for this fund should be culture and language preservation. Of course, the other things that fall underneath, right? The typical education, health, etc. So to me, that's where our argument should be. I mean, your argument, the support of police, fire department, handling. Well, I want to say for the record, I was gonna give it for Snaihne chief perhaps to say. I understand at past meeting, something was brought up, a concern regarding a flood plain. Why would you build in a flood plain? Just today, we were given documentation from a friend of ours in OPG, and we put that to rest. What they call it is an inundation plain. So where they are proposing to build, even the existing fire hall, is not in any danger, should there be a breach of the Robert Moses Dam. Now, floodplain, mind you, is a different scenario. And Celeste's going to help me with that, maybe tomorrow or shortly thereafter. Because what I've also found is that floodplain, that language more exists when you're talking about building. And I think they have all of that already done to some degree. So let's put that to rest. The existing site or the whole site of the fire hall is not in any kind of a danger from a breach of the dam. Okay. Another thing I want to put in your mind, you talked about the Akwesasne fund. There's 290 2-ish million there. There's still supposed to be a process where they're gonna go out to the people in the community. Where we have to really, insist that people have got to come out to those events, you know. More often than not, we're presented to a crowd of 2 people, maybe 1 person, you know. And you gotta give your opinion, where should that money go? What kind of, even dreams, what do we have, direct where that fund can go? And that's gonna take some time. But what I think can be had, and my counsel can attest or argue with me about that, but we don't necessarily have to put that 292, the whole total into a trust. People don't take power away from the people here. If you demand that at least 25, 50 million, who knows, gets set aside before it goes into the trust. Or whatever purpose, infrastructure, fire hall, whatever else we can think of or dream of. Put that aside, then put the rest in the trust. I do, there's gonna be a whole process around dealing with that money too. But we also have processes and procedures that we could look at. Like with referendum, opinion poll, what do you call it? Public site, survey monkey. Stuff like that, they're trying to get to garner the opinion from the people in a quick fashion. That way, that firehouse can be built quite quickly. So it is a long process, otherwise, I kid you not. But we have tools, and that's where it comes from the people. So we hear those announcements of trying to get out there and let these people know where you want this money to go. You really gotta show up the number. Okay?
Thank you. Do you have something you wanted to add, Brian?
Hi, I'm Stevie. I'm gonna bring up a topic, and I'm speaking on this topic as a community member, as a mother, and also as a teacher and coach. And that topic is the Akwesasne International Powwow. And you guys are going through these budgets. And on page 9, only $5,000 was given to the powwow. And I actually want to show you guys. I had a picture. I get nervous when I get into big crowds like this. Obviously, everybody's looking at me, but I knew if I had this picture in front of me, I knew that these are the voices that I would be talking for. And I want you all to look at it. So I work for Akwesasne Youth Fitness. And over, geez, I was thinking about this, probably 10 years, I've been teaching powwow fitness classes to adults and to youth. And in those pictures, there's classes that we've done, and I actually want to tell you guys a story about our hoop troop that Farron King helped me with. And we had about a group of 13 girls, and her father died the day before the powwow. And she was teaching these girls for weeks and weeks and weeks in the hot sun. They would be out there for an hour to 2 hours a day working with these girls. And in that picture, I should have probably kept it in my hands, but there's 2 girls that were in that picture, and they were so scared. They had stage fright. I'm not sure if anybody's ever did powwow dancing in here, but it takes a lot of guts to get out there in front of hundreds and thousands of people. And Farron in that picture, I'm not sure if that was a picture or a picture they had, she hugged them in a circle and she talked to those girls. And these girls weren't going to perform, but they knew how much strength and that it took Farron to go that day after her father died, because she said, I can't let these girls down and I want to dance for my father. So the girls that were so stage fright said, I'm going to get up and I'm going to dance in front of all these people with her and for her father. I just want to know, how do you guys, the powwow, it's an event that brings thousands of people, the whole community. I see faces here that people you haven't seen in a while. It brings everybody together. Everybody visits, everybody smiles, they laugh. I teach tiny talks and that picture. Sometimes in my class, I have 20, 30, 40 babies to 3, 4-year-olds. That's hard. That's a hard job. My body, I'm not young anymore, but I continue to get up and I still do it because the smiles on those kids' faces. And to watch the parents and the kids work at the regalia, and then to watch them put their children in that circle to dance, that's why I do it. So why do you guys not fight for something that's so beautiful and powerful? It empowers our youth, it empowers me. It's a drug and alcohol-free event. So I don't understand why you just kind of let something go, and I don't understand why only $5,000 was given to the powwow. Can you answer that? Why? Do you support the powwow?
Yes, we do. We've had lots of discussions on the powwow in the last several months. Even leading up to the last powwow, right? And this question has been asked to me directly on behalf of council in public forum and council. And do we support the powwow? Yes, we do, right? I mean, but does supporting the powwow translate into larger financial contributions? That's a different conversation, right? I mean, we support the powwow. Do we have to show our support with X amount of money? Then that's ultimately up to council. The $5,000 that's been allocated has been a historical allocation that's been there for a couple of years, and council has committed to keep it to that, but there's been lots of conversations back and forth about it.
Why don't you just put the money towards a powwow? It's the money that's needed, no questions asked, no interviewing, just do it.
It's ultimately up to council again. They've had questions that they've asked, most recently asked who's on the committee, because I understand that the committee has said they've resigned or they're done now. So is there an ask from an existing or a new committee? These are some of the questions that council has asked, and so there's been no official response yet on that, but if there's asks coming forward from a committee to support, this year's powwow, council's asked to, to come forward.
But again, in your beginning slides, you talked about culture restoration, talk about wellness, right? Preserving the culture. Again, this is an event I enjoy teaching. It helps teach these kids that, you can't be under the influence of drugs and alcohol. As soon as you dance and you enter that circle, that power gets taken away. So still, there needs to be more support from there. More than $5,000. As a dancer, mother, it's sad. I was just in Ottawa, me and my husband, and stormed off. But we're passionate people. That's what it is. We're passionate. And we're standing here fighting for the things that we love and we want to see that will help our community. And I was just in Ottawa a couple weeks ago, me and him, and a woman was like, oh, I come to the Akwesasne powwow every single year. I can't wait. And I was like, geez, I don't know what to tell you other than I don't even know if that's going to happen. So it's sad.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your insight, and definitely you feel the passion and, being a participant, have seen the work that you have done. And I thank you for that, and working with the little ones. The powwow discussion is an ongoing, and, it's ultimately up to council how much they want to allocate to that. I mean, I can tell you that they do support the powwow, just haven't landed on if they're providing more than $5,000 this time, but we acknowledge what you have to.
So I have a comment to add to that. And you talk about process. We're always talking about process and how long our processes take. And some of them seem to take forever, which creates frustration in the community and in the. Well, what does it take? A petition to come forward from a district or from a community to almost, in a sense, force your hand into acting on a petition? And I'll just give an example. I'm going to present a petition with 200 names that tells and dictates to the council from the community. This is an example now, all right? It just presented these budgets. They're showing a surplus in certain areas and they're showing reserves. So I present a petition at next month's meeting, and the petition is signed by over 200 community members saying the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne will reach into the reserves, find the money to increase the allocation, the yearly allocation for the powwow, so it can be restored or remain in check, because it just celebrated the 20th anniversary, if I recall, the last powwow that was held here. So after 20 years of committee reaching its frustration point, obviously, when you reach that frustration point, you give up. So having to go out to the community and force council's hand into increasing and assisting that funding, I'm using hypothetics again, next month I'll present a petition that says council shall increase the funding to $20,000. Is that a process that'll work, that will force you now to find those dollars within these reserve dollars of, what was it, 39 million, whatever that amount was? I don't have it in front of me because I'm looking at a report by recently sworn chief. I'm reading District Chief Larry King's report, and I'm very saddened by it and the wording that's used and the frustrations and the short amount of time he's spent on council that he's had to encounter. He's supposed to be working as a team, a chief that's put back on council that has a lot of corporate memory and worked very hard in certain areas, and we're all talking about our electrical issues and MCRs. So an MCR passed years ago on the powwow committee allocation dollars, and it was that easy to rescind it from 10,000 and take it to 5. But now we look at the district chief's goals and objectives of what he'd like to work towards, and he's being told, no, we already have 3 members identified under an MCR. MCRs can be rescinded every week. So what's with the number 3, 1 per district? You have to take into consideration some of his corporate memory of how far his career took him into the expertise that he has to share. And he's already reached out, according to his report, to quite a few people as far as the electrical issues that are going. So my real question is, if I present a petition, will you respect it? If it says the powwow funds will be increased? It's a simple question. It's a yes or no question. Petition is presented next month to increase the powwow funds. Will you respect what that petition results are from community members if it's an increase to $20,000? Yes or no?
So ultimately, the question, ultimately it's up to council. So what happens when petitions are presented, and if they're presented according to the rules, they're presented at a general meeting, they're sent off for verification, and if they meet the threshold, then what happens is that goes on to a resolution, and it's considered moved and seconded. But ultimately, it still needs council's vote to approve whatever that action is. That's the process. So, the question, how do we present a petition? What's going to happen? I just described it to you. Ultimately, it's up to council, and they decide yes or no.
I'll present a petition next month.
Okay. Well, I can share the regulations with you, so they can ensure that it's done to the process, because there have been processes done and it's not followed, and what happens is they get kicked back, right? So make sure that if you are to present one, then you follow the process so that can be done, right? Okay, I'll just go to general questions. We'll go for about another 10-15 minutes. Go ahead.
When are you gonna set the date for DIHE to present to you with your capital projects budget? And is that gonna come to the community?
In reference to the line that said will be presented, is that what you're talking about? The way it's been designed is that as they work through the projects, they will present them one by one.
Because I have a question about the Anju station on Mohawk, a secondary location. Is that just a design that's 90% complete?
Yeah. Yes, when she spoke earlier, I think when Deputy Chief O'Brien spoke, it's 95% complete, just basically complete, but it's just the design.
Okay.
And I know that there's been lots of questions around, is the police, the location relocating, what's that look like? No decision has been made. They're only in a design phase. And again, just in comparison, that design phase has actually been happening for, 2+ years. Okay. Go ahead, so we'll go over here first and then we'll go back over here. Okay, go ahead, yeah.
So I have a question. How do you, so Galway Rec needs a new building, right? We've talked to our district chiefs. So how do we get that on the capital plan?
I don't know, Leslie, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. You have to explain a bit more of the process for that.
Just put in a request. I'm sorry, and you just put in a request, send it to me, and we'll start that process and go from there. It's more of a kind of preliminary, just to get that going. Same as what happened with all the other previous projects. We need to find funding.
I thought that was done already because we had Joe Francis come to us with a plan.
Is to your left, your hard left.
Okay, now I'll take a look and see it in our office. Okay.
So, I mean, one of the challenges, right? I mean, say the recreation specifically for Gowanoga is space as well. Like we don't have, it's all part of the planning, which putting on a capital plan is only one step. It's all of the design, the planning, the studies that have to be done to be able to support, the new build. But definitely what Leslie has said, and if it has been done previously, I don't think it's on the list right now, but it's definitely something that we can put on there and start the process, right?
So what are we looking at? 20 years on the road? Or is that how this is working?
No, I wouldn't say that far, but I mean, definitely, we're probably, if it was expedited, we're probably 3 to 4 years, potentially. It all depends too, with the problem, not the problem, but when we do capital projects, we want the government to fund as much as they will as well, right? I mean, so there's a big thing that, councils talk about is fiduciary responsibility, right? So certain projects which are, the government may be on the hook to fund, we have to unfortunately follow their processes. And then those are the long, tedious ones. If they're a project that we're completely going to fund all with our own money, then we don't have to follow exactly all of those processes, but some of them still do have to be followed. So that's just in capital projects in general, and that determines how fast it can happen.
Does the capital plan get presented to the community when it's completed? Year capital plan.
During 20-year is probably 20 years old, and so it hasn't been updated, but in the normal process of it, yes, it would go through a consultation with the community.
I just have a question with respect to the budget. It's with respect to the Akwesasne Mohawk ambulance unit. When we see in this budget highlights, we see that there's all kinds of purchase of equipment for the police services. New snowmobiles, new 4-wheelers, new boat, new heavy-duty truck, new trailer, new IT equipment. But in the next section, you see AMA, they need a new ambulance. They're working hard to get more EMTs, paramedics, and they have a goal of getting 6 ambulances. And what's going on, or what steps are being taken for them to achieve that goal of getting 6 ambulance, but really to just get at least 1 more ambulance to achieve full complement. This program services the entire community. It's like the police, it's like the fire, and they're in dire needs of new equipment. So what's being done? How soon can they hear from anybody, I guess? Who is the portfolio holder for this section anyway?
Who's health? Put your hand up.
Who?
Health.
It's public.
Oh, public safety, sorry. Who's public safety? It's on the screen. Vanessa, Julie, and April. They're public safety. Yeah.
They're not here. Yeah, so they need a new ambulance. They don't need snowmobiles or 4-wheelers or trucks or boats or trailers, but they need an ambulance because the ambulance will be there to help the entire community.
Yeah,
You know, they need new life-saving equipment. I don't even know what they are, but they need that. And I hear, sitting here listening to all these discussions, but I don't hear the ambulance,
mhm,
you know, and they see it's right here. They're $1 million in deficit. So what's going on, what's taking place to get more additional funding? They only have $719 in funding, but their expenses exceed 2.6. And they have a deficit of 1.9, so when does that Mohawk ambulance become a priority? When do we see action being taken to get new ambulances, new life-saving equipment,
mhm.
their preventative measures for life-saving? When does that happen?
Yeah, so just, I'm not aware that they need new equipment, so I would say that,
Says it right here.
does it say they,
They need,
okay,
says,
because those are supposed to be what they're gonna be doing this year.
it says need one more ambulance to achieve full complement.
Yeah,
Take your,
yeah, so, we've never had problem buying new ambulances. Council has either found the money or has allocated the money to buy an ambulance, right? So but the challenge with the Mohawk ambulance is that there's not been enough bodies, right? So you have 10 ambulances, if you ain't got 40 people to operate it, the ambulance is good as nothing, right? So I mean, that's been an ongoing challenge there, and definitely you can appreciate in the healthcare sector with the pandemic, they have taken a hit as well, right? And so the other aspect of the ambulance, right, and this kind of ties a bit into the fire department. There's inquiries within the Mohawk Council saying, if we're going to build a new fire department in Snaihne, why don't we allocate a bay for an ambulance, right? And so this is kind of some of the back and forth that's been going on this design thing too, right? So there's probably a design for a fire truck, and the design for an ambulance is going to be different, right? So this is why this kind of circle of design is still ongoing, because those inquiries are coming to us as well.
Would the ambulance manager be part of those discussions? Or would you have the director, but they don't really have a director, right? They have a chief of police, but what does he know about ambulance services?
Mhm.
He probably knows more stuff about police, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, in part of the discussions, I mean, it's once you land on whether it's happening or not, when you bring in the folks. So, back to the ambulance, if there are needs, we're definitely supportive of them. The one with the police services was what happens a lot is that we receive money for specific things, right? So the government will give us, $400,000 for only police equipment, right? So we can't buy ambulances with that, or can't buy other things. You can only buy, new police cars and, body cams and stuff that support the police services. So that's why it's listed a lot on there, because a lot of that money is what's targeted for equipment, not anything else.
Okay, so I vote that you guys put AMA as a priority. And I don't have a vote, so, and that they get a new ambulance.
Yeah.
I can share that Enniska did submit a proposal and was successful in getting an award for a new ambulance this year. And that she's a great advocate for her services. And I was supporting her in that work, so I know that she is working.
So she needs another one because it's written right here, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So the other thing with the purchase of ambulances, and this is happening in a lot of sectors, is it's because of the healthcare sector and COVID, the buy time, we buy today, we still won't have for several months down the road, if not a year. Ambulance is specialized, you can't just buy it off the lot. That's one of the challenges we're having with that as well. We'll go over here.
Question, why would you put ambulance under public safety and take it away from health? When public safety has no idea about what health does, and whereas health would be pushing for an ambulance and for the EMS, whereas public safety, they wouldn't do that, like Lynn said.
Yeah, I don't recall the rationale why it was moved like that, but again, it goes back to the question I was earlier about the public safety department being more robust than it is now, right? And not be the chief of police, but rather a director of public safety that can help support all of those programs under there. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
But
Go ahead quickly.
my final comment. When is council? It's the 21st century. When are we gonna stop relying on the external governments? Look at this reserves. And I know we always talk about we gotta save for the next 7 generations. But if the urgency and need is now, and those reserves are sitting there, 2.6 million of Enbridge dollars that would help. Instead of having a lobby or find the funding for a new ambulance. Reserve some of the money towards your projects that you know that are needed and that the expectation from the community is rather than wait another 3 years for a fire department or 15 years for a recreation center or a new ambulance. Take some of this money and start spending some of the reserves. I'm not saying we gotta spend 10 million of it. Look at it and say, we may need to spend $2 million, whether it's 2023-2024 budget, or we spend it right at the beginning of the next fiscal year. You already know it's allocated now for next year. And that'll satisfy some of the emergent needs that continue to rise every day in our community. The electrical issue, it's gonna need to be a monetary contribution. Put that money aside now. Why wait? I've been waiting probably 5 years, and the pandemic has been the excuse for the last 3 years about why things haven't moved along. That Dundee settlement claim that came, I've been coming to every meeting about these things, and we haven't even gotten to the point yet of saying, how are we gonna spend that money? And you just keep saying, we're gonna have meetings on it. We keep waiting. So when it comes to the point of urgency, have these meetings every week. You know, the public perception of council members sitting there is that they're working from home. You have 3 or 4 members sitting at home. I don't need to know the reasons why they're sitting at home, but the public expectation is accountability back to the people. Part of the accountability process is being able to answer our questions. The answers always being, it takes time. Set your own priorities to make these achievable goals within your terms. That's my final comment tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the members online are on travel for council business. They're not at home. Yeah, go ahead. My apologies for that.
Abram, I just wanted, this probably isn't a question, but more observation. And it kind of affects Leslie too. But when I read the part where it says Park Street, Hilltop, sewer, road reconstruction funded by ISC, completion of curbing and asphalt, paving. I have a concern when it comes to the construction, especially in the village, because of asbestos contamination and with the pipes under the roads, especially it goes back to the church loop construction project that was done years ago. And then how those pipes are filled with asbestos. So I get worried about my neighbors in the village because of those pipes. And I think about now the effects that it's going to have on my grandkids because of the contamination to my property. So it's more out of concern and worry that you are taking safety precautions to protect the people in the village when it comes to reconstruction and the road projects. And so I know that there's asbestos in those pipes. Thanks.
I appreciate you sharing that. Definitely something that will make sure that that's being mitigated in all aspects. Quickly, please, we're trying to close up.
I just wanted to touch base with what Cheryl said. I looked and I saw something that they made a big circle of from Leslie's presentation. It said P3. Cheryl, as a past chief, we never let the government out. Nothing. As far as they're concerned, we're flat broke. We never let the government out. Well, P3 means private public partnerships. And they're asking more and more of that of us, right, Leslie? The only reason I know a little bit more about it is from our attempts and our discussions around what we call the Quebec link. which was hopefully, and I want to get back on that horse as well. Bring back the idea of a bridge linking the Snaihne and Mohawk. That's where that P3 came up, something that they told us to think about, it's the Quebec government. You know, that's a $10 million price tag at the time. I mean, I keep saying that. At the time, that's more than 10 years ago, so it's probably that plus half. So E3 is the call it a day. I think we need to get more wrapped around that concept.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for your questions and comments tonight. Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies. Go ahead.
I'm here to get the loot here for question. And you're not asking Snaihne or St. Bridget, they want to move to the island, which is a safety hazard. You're gonna be rushing from the island, St. Bridget to Snaihne. Since he's been here, like, in where cops, not 24/7. I want to be guaranteed if they go to the island, we're gonna have a patrol car 24/7 year round in Snaihne and one in Snaihne. Well, the bridge, I don't know how many bridges we got with the tractor trailer the other night. How they gonna get here, roll a canoe? I don't know. So if you vote, the Snaihne bridges on that building, my vote's no.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Definitely is something that we continue to hear a concern, about the location. And we've been assured that, I mean, regardless where the station are, the police are on the road. They're not in the station, right? But it's definitely is a concern that we want reassurance that's, the furthest location of the community won't be neglected because they're on the other side of the community. So thank you for that. So it's 9 o'clock now, so I'm going to move to close this evening's meeting. I thank all of you for the discussion this evening. Again, on the budget presentations, if you have questions, members of council, it would help facilitate answers. The contact information is on there for the department directors, and so they're available as well to answer some questions. So I'm going to read a resolution for the record to accept and approve the attached general meeting minutes dated February 23rd, 2023. Could I have a mover? Dwayne, second by Cindy. Discussion on the resolution.
Question.
February 23rd. Questions been called on the resolution. All in favor? Any against? None against, it's carried. All right, thank you very much. Our next general meeting will be held April 27th on Cornwall Island at AMS School. So, could I have a motion to adjourn, please? Edward and Sarah. All right, thank you.